Hello everyone, and welcome back to some more Gamesplaning. Now, it's been a while since we've done one of these, but we are back with Rimworld. For those of you who do not know what Rimworld is a strategy game where you play as survivors on a Rimworld. Literally an uncolonized, well not uncolonized, but a uncivilized planet. The point of the game is for you to have your civilization flourish, get more members of your civilization, and build up a stable economy and food gathering systems and all of this so that your survivors can survive. And the final goal obviously being returning home and leaving the planet. Now, Rimworld is a very quite advanced strategy game, I'd say. It is way more advanced than most of the games that I played. In the sort of sense that you actually control basically everything except where your characters are moving. You give them orders, you have to set specific areas where they do stuff, like here setting up a storage area. Then you have to set them to build, then you have to set them to mine, specifically where they're supposed to mine, what they are supposed to be gathering. All of these things. You're also supposed to give the different characters certain jobs so that you know that, okay, this character is a doctor. He will handle medical situations. And that is where it actually becomes quite advanced. All the characters have different skills and they're good at certain things. Now, if you have one character that is good as a doctor, no one else, and he becomes sick or wounded, you are in a big problem. You can obviously set anyone to do the doctoring, but they're probably gonna be very bad and he's probably gonna get an infected wound, might lose a leg, might die. There are a lot of things that can happen. And that's what I kind of love about the game. The customizability, the way that you control the characters and your survival lists, basically. Now, the game is very similar to Dwarf Fortress. Dwarf Fortress being a very old game. I think it's even like a browser game. And takes heavy inspiration from that, but making it a more modern version. This is obviously from the same developers as Prison Architect. As you might see from the graphic style, it's a very similar graphic style. And the gameplay is kind of similar as well, except there's different settings. In Prison Architect, you are supposed to have your prisoners be secure, not allow them to leave or like do any outbreaks or anything like that. In this, it's more about building a survivable situation for the characters instead of keeping them safe and out of harm's way and in a area where they cannot wound or damage your characters. Now, Rimworld, being as it is, obviously you can get down very, very thoroughly to the nitty-gritties of the game, but we're not gonna be doing that. Like, obviously that would take hours to go through all the mechanics and how everything works, but I'm gonna tell you a bit of the basics. So you start off on this planet, you start to set up your base like I'm doing here. You set a gathering zone. You have to allow your characters to gather the things that they dropped with for some reason, because apparently they can't touch them otherwise. No? And then you start off. Now, as I said, the goal is very simple. Survival. And your characters can be very different from each other. Like, they vary a lot from playthrough to playthrough. You can randomize them, or you can kind of create them yourself in some sort of sense. I like randomizing, obviously, but you really want a diverse cast, obviously, of different skilled survivalists, because you are going to need people that are good at building, people that are good at mining, people that can plant things, people that can cook, because if they can't cook, they are probably going to fail that, and you're gonna get food poisoning on your characters, and they're gonna puke, and they're gonna go sick, and they might die. So it is a lot of things that goes into this, but this also gives the game some of the best stories that I've ever heard. Like, there are some insane things that can happen in this game. And I really love it. But yeah, obviously you can choose the difficulty. Right now on this playthrough I played on, I think it was medium difficulty, like builder difficulty, where it's like, yeah, things are going to happen, but mostly just build and chill. And that is, you can play on very, very difficult settings, very different settings. You can also choose like, oh yes, this storyteller, as they're called, like the people you can choose, this guy just throws random shit at you. This guy just like kind of ramps it up slowly and things like that. So you can customize the way the player experience a lot in this game. Now the game is quite simple, but the tech tree isn't. Well, it isn't that advanced. As I said, a lot of the systems and a lot of the mechanics get kind of advanced, and the tech tree is no exception. As you can see, it's quite big. It goes even further to the right, but basically you have to choose what you actually want to research and what you want to learn for your survivalists to be able to use. Like taking things like the ability to create medicine gives them obviously the ability to make medicine, which is better, so that they can survive, and then you can sell them, like here where I'm trading with one of the trading caravans that can randomly come by your settlement and try to trade with you. Obviously you some of the things that you need cannot be gained, you cannot make it in the beginning, so you'll need to rely on these trader caravans. So you make things that you like, make too much of something, and then you sell it off to the trader caravan, which will happily buy it, and you can buy other things like advanced medicine and things like that, which is you are probably not going to have that in the beginning. It kind of creates this dynamic economy system where you actually have to have some of your characters focus on certain things. Like I did on this playthrough, I had a guy that created like quite good statues and things like that. So I kept just making statues and selling them off to traders, and it worked out really well, because the sell value of the statues are actually quite high if you have a character that is good at creating statues. Now obviously the game, the difficulty curve of the game is quite nice. So you start off with a buff, basically, so everyone's super happy in the beginning. You can just build one room and have them all sleep in there, but after a while this survival buff, as they call it, will fade away, and you will need to start fulfilling the demands of your survivalists. Like after a while they're gonna go like, well, I want a separate room to sleep in, I don't want to sleep with these two guys or girls. And so you have to make different rooms for them, separate rooms. You have to fill those rooms with things so that like the environment is not just dirt and rocks and things like that. You have to make the environment kind of look pretty, because that increases their happiness. And if a character is unhappy for too long, they are going to start to have a mental breakdown. Having mental breakdowns, they can go crazy. Some of them are like mild, kind of mild, like, oh yes, I don't know, some sort of eating disorder and just shoving food into his mouth now because he feels sad and he doesn't really like the situation he's in, which is understandable. And some of them are like, oh yes, he's a pyromaniac and his mental breakdown caused him to start lighting fires everywhere, and now your entire building is on fire. So keeping your survivalists happy and mentally healthy is equally as important as keeping them physically healthy. Now, obviously when you get later into the game, later and later, it is kind of basically just a staircase of things get harder. After a while, obviously, when you start to get into these kind of situations where you have to fight like raiders coming to your camp trying to take stuff, your characters are going to become wounded, and if they are treated with medical care in an unhealthy or unsterilized area, they are prone to getting infections. You have to create basically a hospital at later stages, like, or well, not a hospital exactly, but some sort of room that are sterilized, that you can have your sick people or wounded people in, because they heal better in sterilized areas because they won't get infections. The other part of the game comes a little bit after you have established kind of your basic idea of your survivalist camp, because obviously the area that you start in isn't the only place on this planet. And to be able to build this rocket, you need to travel and find the different parts that are crashed down, and the things that you need to rebuild it. Here I'm basically starting a caravan to send them out to a plantation that I found that was filled with tribal people. Mostly because they had stuff that I wanted. They had like a medical bed, security door, things like this, and I wanted that. So I was like, yeah, let's send my 2 guys, and just hope that they'll do fine. Now, sending caravans, I've realized, is a bit more of a hassle than you think. You think like, yeah, you send a bunch of food with them and they'll be fine. Like, they have like 50 portions of food and they eat like twice a day. It should be fine. Until you realize that because the food is not in a refrigerator that you can actually build, you can make refrigerators and freezers. But because it isn't in a freezer or refrigerator, the food is going to rot. And you realize, oh wait, they only have 2 days of food, because after like the 2 days, the food starts to rot from being in like a warm temperature all the time. And it is at that point you panic because you sent your guys basically to die. Luckily for me, this time they didn't really die. We'll see that in a while. But yeah, the progression of the game is like kind of the best thing, because you start out with this tiny little hut, it becomes like 2 or 3 more houses, and suddenly you start building with concrete and stone to create these walls or secure buildings instead of your tiny wooden shacks. And I just love that in a game. That is one of my favorite things in these kind of management games. And when you actually get into that position where you can actually start to expand, you can actually do these things, that is when it starts to become fun. Now, here we have some examples of... it's kind of later in the game. I've built up the settlement a bit more. We had some farms going on there, down there in the south where the alpaca is sleeping. I have my animal house where basically I just shelter my animals there, because I feel that it's better that they chill there than inside my storage hut, basically. And I also have planned out like where to build my next building and things like this. And I just love this kind of gameplay, because I don't know why, but it feels so like chill, even though it isn't. Like, you can easily panic in this game and just it just escalates very quickly usually in these kinds of games. Obviously, you should be playing this on Iron Man mode. That is what I have to say about that. Iron Man mode or no mode at all. But now the important question comes to, how is the combat? And, well, this is kind of an example of it. No, but seriously, the combat is... Obviously, you don't control the combat in any sort of sense, but it is kind of good. It is kind of tactical, because you can, while in this skirmish mode, you can actually control your characters where they stand, and that brings the tactical vision into it. When they shoot, I'm not sure, because you don't really get any stats for your characters, so I'm not sure what like the hit percentage. I just know that this guy has 10 in shooting and it's probably really good. But it is at this point I've gone to the plantation. I'm killing all the tribespeople because they started attacking me, and I'm just backing off here. And the combat, it's not really involved. You mostly just control them where they are going to stand and just just wait until hopefully they have a better chance of hitting than the enemy and just kills them. And that is basically it. That is basically the combat. Obviously, it is a bit more involved like that. You can make gear for your characters and things like this, which affects them a lot during the combat. Like, they can have helmets so that wounds that they gain in the head aren't as severe. Oh crap, that was an explosion. Oh yeah, something landed by the base. But what I mean is, the combat is not very involving, but it is very advanced in a sense. Every time your character gets hit, the game calculates where he got hit, what kind of wound he suffered, how well he got hit. Like, did he get hit in the lung if he was hit in the chest, or was it just like a grazing shot and things like that. And I think that's fine. I consider that fine as a combat system in this kind of game, because that isn't really the focus of the game. The focus is the management, is the building of your base, and building up your settlement. But that is basically Rimworld. There is not really much more to say about it. Obviously, I could talk about it for a while, but I think the best way to get a sense of what Rimworld is playing it yourself, because it is kind of special. There aren't that many games that are as involved in everything you do as a management game as Rimworld. And I really love that. But yeah, I hope you guys also liked this video on Rimworld. I tried to explain it as the best I can, and I hope I made some sort of sense. And I hope you liked it. But remember, guys, please do like, subscribe, and comment. Tell me if you want some more Gamesplaining, because I've been a bit lazy on it. And also, obviously, tell me if this was good, if you want to see another game or anything like that. And I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.